This week in lab, we're going to be covering dimensioning and multi-leaders, and then also setting up layouts in Paperspace in our different drawings. These are going to be slightly more advanced topics as we move through the chapters in the book. And we're going to start with dimensioning, which is chapter 28. And it's a little bit out of order, but I think it's better to do dimensioning first and then do layouts second. And you may see why here in a second. It's normally how we work it through that, and they're kind of interrelated. We don't usually do dimensioning unless we do have layouts ready to go. And next week we'll be looking at this in more in depth. We usually put our dimensions on the layout sheet and not in the actual model space. Today for practice we're going to do the model space. It works the same. It's just I guess where we want to show them in the end. There's good reasons for putting them in Paperspace later on. I guess we'll get into that next week. This is ICA Lesson 5 ICA 1, the .dwg, which I have open here. And from a distance, this looks like just empty boxes, but if you zoom in, it actually shows you what it's supposed to look like. And I just died through these in here so that, and I realize they're a little pixelated, but that's okay. All right, just so you know what we're hoping for when we're done. It says, up here it says dimension all the links on all the sides. Okay, well, what do they want? What kind of dimensions? How do they want those lined up? You can look down here, you can see how they're lined up. And this is what we call aligned, and it is this type of alignment here. I'm in Civil 3D, but I'm in drafting in the annotation workspace. And so you can see up here, I've switched over to drafting in the annotation. And so this is, when you're in Civil 3D, that's what this ribbon is going to look like in your menu bar. Up there, we come in here, we're going to do dimensionings on that. Dimensionings, here's our home. All right, from that and dimensionings, you can do, there's some quick ones here from annotation, but I just usually like to go over to the annotation tab in the menu bar here and click that. And now I have the full set. This is where we were last week. We had text, and so we can put our text in there. And then here we can do our dimensions, right? And you can expand dimensions. There's other options down here for how you want to align your dimensions and so forth. And then underneath the linear, there's this drop-down bar, and that's where most of the things we're going to use today are found, is hidden underneath that. So again, I can move that back to normal. Underneath the linear, right, that drop-down box, that's where most of ours are. And or we're going to use baseline and continue, and those are over here underneath that dimension option. Excuse me, there. Up here, just like when we did text, we've got menus, and so we have styles, and so we can manage our dimension style. We open it up, it looks a lot like the text style boxes did. Here's our standard one if we want to modify it. All right, now we can come through here and we can look at all the different ways to modify that. And you can change how your lines look. You can change what kind of text you're using. You can change how it's fit inside of there, what units. Here's a good way to change how many decimal places of info you want to show on it. I think we have it shown as 4 now, but if you only want to show 1 or 2, you can change that under primary units. And you will need that for your homework. I believe that switches there. You can do alternative units and so forth. So there's a lot of options, and that's all managed by the style. So quite often in most drawings, you'll have a few different styles for your dimensions. It depends on what you're dimensioning. I work a lot in roadways, and so our dimensions for lane widths and so forth is usually rounded off the nearest foot, or maybe it's 0.1. So we use 1 decimal in there, whereas if you're doing bridge dimensions, they like to go to, quite often they use fractions in imperial, or for their millimeters, and they're doing a metric. And so you can change what format your dimensions are on that. And then also what layer they're on, can be set up in that standard. And if you want to use different fonts and so forth, and sizes and all that. So this is our dimension style manager. I'm just going to leave it in the standard one here. And we're going to use aligned to start with. And so here's my linear. Well, here's aligned. And aligned is, right, pick 2 points and you pull it off. And that's what they mean by aligned is that the dimension is aligned along the line you picked. Right, from that. And we can come down here, we can check and see if we did it right. Yeah, that's pretty close, right? That's how it's supposed to look. And you can just keep using that all the way around. Click on aligned again. Click, and so I want to have my object snaps turned on, so make sure your object snaps are on. And I want my usual endpoints, center, midpoint, nodes, intersections, and all that stuff down here. And that way, when I'm clicking on it, it'll snap to those corner points and I can keep going around. And I just align it all the way around. So that's what they're asking for there. Here's an angular dimension, and angular you can find underneath this drop down. Here's angular. And if you don't know what to do, just read the instructions down here in the command bar. All right, specify the vertex. Or select arc, circle, line, or specify vertex. I'm going to pick 2 lines, and then I can just set my dimension in there like that and go through. So there's angular. You can do more aligned on that, and we've already practiced it, so I'll leave it up to you to do it. Over here, we're doing baseline dimensions, and this gets a little bit harder, and we're using the dimension command here. What I always forget when I'm doing is I have to put one dimension in first. And I'm going to use an aligned dimension, and I'm going to pick off these 2 points, and here's my first dimension. And from here now I can do baseline, and once I do baseline I can pick off of there. Just got to screw that up, and I can keep clicking, and every time I add one, right, it moves over, and that's what baseline does for you. And that one shouldn't have been in there. Let's get rid of, oops. Escape. Let's get rid of that one. So that's what we wanted to do out of that. I can also use it. If I use dim, if I want to type in the command, right, I can set that first one up there, and I can continue baseline now. And it automatically remembers the last one I did. That's where I made this mistake. The first one I didn't have to click it again. It'll remember which is the last one you did, and it just continues on from that. And this is kind of a little bit too much. We should have drawn it like this. Oh, I wasn't supposed to use baseline on the vertical ones. I was supposed to use dim on that. So okay. So this should look like that when you're done. Right, from here, and then there's also continue. So baseline, it brings all the dimensions back to this far left line, or whichever baseline you pick. So that's what baseline is doing. It's bringing it over here. Continue does these individually in pieces, but it continues along each time. And so I'm going to do an aligned first. I'm going to come in here and snap my 2. There's my first dimension. Now I'm going to come up, hit that, select continue, and it continues on from the last one, and there, and there, and there. And it lines up nicely, and it continues that same line across, and you don't have to repick. It saves you a lot of picking points if you do that. And come through when you're done at escape and you're off. So that's what continue does, and now we're supposed to do it in vertically, and we're just using the dim command, and I will let you do that on that. Radius, you can guess over here is the drop down here for it. There's radius, and I just have to click that, and then I can move this around until I get my leader where I want it to be. This is called leader. On that, I can repeat that over here, and so forth. On that, there's also a diameter. So there's my radius. Here's my diameter. I can click that. I can set my diameter. Puts the little I call it a phase symbol in front of it. Circle the line through it, and that shows that we're in dimensions. Or sorry, diameter for your dimensions through that. You can do jogged. You can do a lot of different ones here. Here's jogged down here. I can click that, and it's like a little lightning bolt, which click twice to show where you're at through there. And that's if it's a really large radius or a really large arc, and you're never going to be able to see it back to the center point, right? You can put this little jogged symbol on here, and that means that, yeah, this line doesn't go all the way back to the center of the radius through there. I think that's the main ones. Arc length, let's see where that is. Here's arc length, and arc length, select the polyline or arc segment. Yep. And you can bring that in, and and this symbol means arc, and that's the distance on it. And so there's our arc length. I think that's all the main ones through here. The next set of commands we do are MultiLeaders or MLeader. Through that, there's a ribbon command for this up here as well in the toolbar. So there's our ribbon command. You can set up standards for it. You can set up styles on that. And again, it looks just like we did it for text or for dimensions. And there's our style box for those. And so you can set, I do like to play with my leaders a lot. And this one, usually in drawing hierarchy, when you're making a set of plans, certain things are one size and other things are different sizes on all these leaders. The more important things for, like, say, in roadway work or alignment pieces are all in larger text. I have a different style for that because I want it to look different. And it's usually sometimes a different font and a different size. And then normal callouts for construction will be smaller in a different font. Occasionally we use italics to denote a certain kind of leader, different kind of information on it. We set that up in the styles on that. I'm going to leave these alone for now. And if you start your multi-leader, just there, where do you want the line to go to? I'm just going to put it here in the middle of space. This is a 3-point leader. You can see because it had the point at the end. It has a little bit of a flat line on it. And then to put in a note. So this is a 2x6 studs, 16 inches on center. Right from there, and I should have made that in all caps. So there we go. And I should have put a space in there. There we go. Now we've got it. 2x6 studs, 16 inches on center, and then I would have finished the rest of that text, but you can type all that in from there. So there's my 3-point leader, and that's probably our most standard type one. And it's, again, if you don't like how it aligns things, if you don't like how long this landing is or how big the arrowhead is, all of that can be changed in your style. And that's where you fix that. And this is good enough to get started. There's a lot of different kinds of leaders. Here you can expand all the, I guess, get back into the style. Here you're going to make a new style if you want to do spline, and so we'll call that spline. And what kind of leader is this going to be? So here's our text style. Here's our leader format. Our leader format is straight. No, I want a spline one because that's my next one on there. So I'll say okay, and I'll make spline. I'll set that as current. And now I'm going to start my leader. Close that out. Now I do a multi-leader, click on that point, and there's spline. And we don't have to put text in here, but I will. So that's what a spline looks like. It's a smooth one. And some companies, that's the standard they prefer. They prefer doing the spline standard. I'm not a fan usually of that. Most of my text, I like the straight one normally. You can change how the end of it looks. And again, we can show you an example of that. If I do styles here, and make a new one, and we'll call it dot arrow. And continue, sure. And like this one here, symbols and arrows. What kind of arrow do I want? Do I want closed filled? No, I want a dot on the end of it. Now you can see it shows here what that'll look like. In a leader, I also want a dot on it. And I'll click OK. And I'll set that as current, close, multi-leader, come back, hit that. And didn't work. Let's try it. Let's see. Oh, I'm still set for spline. I thought I'd picked, I must not have saved my dot arrow. New. Oh, I made it as a dimension standard, not as a spline standard. Well, that's bad. So I'm going to start with that one. So continue. Now I can come in here to my leader format. And what kind of symbol do I want at the bottom? I want a dot. Okay. And that dot arrow I will set current. I'll close this, delete that. And now if I come back and hit that, there's my dot. And this one's based off of spline, but that's okay. You can make it as a straight leader or as a dot on it, or you can do none, or you can have no arrow whatsoever. That's one of the settings in there. But for each one, you'll need to make a new style, because otherwise, if you keep changing the standard style, all of these will change as soon as you change it, and then you'll be out of luck. So you'll figure it out. But it's better to make a new style for each one, and that's how you'll keep those in there. Through that, here you're just going to use your multi-leader commands to make leaders callouts on that. Again, we use these all the time in most drafting, because we're always putting text and callouts on plans trying to tell the contractor how to build things. And that's our main piece. Again, if you zoom in down here, this will resolve and you can kind of see what they're supposed to look like when you're done. So it gives you something to gauge off of and see if you did it right. And that should cover you for chapter 28, which is the dimensioning and multi-leader piece. All right, from that. There's 2 ICA drawings this time in class assignment drawings or the lab drawings. So lesson 5 ICA 1, that was that one. And if we want to open up the second one is ICA 2. Mine's called tutorial, but yours will just be drawing. And I'll pop that up. I wanted to show you when I open this. This happens all the time in Civil 3D files, is that it's missing some file. And it's going to say ignore. You can replace an SHX file, which is a specialized shape file, which is usually some specialized font is normally what it is, or it could be a symbol. Always pick ignore, and you can click this always performat and always click ignore. Just ignore those. Some Civil 3D drawings you're going to get like 2 or 3 different. It can't find all of the base drawings and it can't find the SHX. Just ignore all that stuff. It's really common even in fancy consulting firms that you're going to get those error messages, and just click ignore. So that's why I wanted to show opening this file as we get into it. So here's the next one, and then we've got some pretty extensive notes this time on what we're supposed to be doing with it, and I've got that on another screen here. I'll slide that over. And now we're going to be playing with model space and paper space. And we'll talk about this in class, but this is a little bit of an advanced concept, I guess, or a more advanced one. And, in the places I've worked before, we've had interns come in the summer. We ask them if they're, had any practice in CAD, and well, yeah, sure. And some will say they're really good at it, but if you ask them, well, what's the difference between model space and paper space? And if they don't know, they're not good at CAD. That's the litmus test of, they didn't learn that much. They learned how to do some basic drafting, stuff we've learned so far. But if they don't know what paper space is, you've not probably worked in a real production place before. You haven't had an internship, because this is how everything is made, is in paper space. Right? The model space is the 3D world where your line elements, your items, right, live. And it's usually, most of us keep it in a black background through that, and that's model space. And this is, in a virtual world, this is where things really are, is in model space. And so, okay, great. Paper space is how you choose to represent it. And it's like you're looking through a window or into the model space. And then you take a snapshot through that window. And that's what you hand out to contractors. And you hand out paper, right? You make paper prints. That's why they call it paper space. And that's found down here in these tabs. Here's model space. And again, when you're drawing stuff natively the first time, that's where you draw it. And then you come over here to layouts, and these layout tabs, and this we'd call paper space. And so now this is the same drawing, right? The background here, all this black stuff in the background on this white piece, it lives in model space, right? If I flip back to model space, takes it a second, right? That's that stuff. And those elements, like here, I can highlight those and I can click on them and I can do stuff to them. That's in model space. If I come back here to paper space, give it a second, right? I can't touch that stuff because I'm looking through a window at it, and I am not in that. I'm not in that space. I'm in paper space, and the paper space is set up to make paper prints of stuff in model space. And you can see here we've got a title block on it, and that's a block. We'll learn how to do blocks later. And then we've got this window area we call a viewport, and the viewport looks into model space, and we can change that. We can change how that looks in there. How do you know if you're in paper space or model space? Well, I'm in layout, and so I should be in paper space normally. But over here on the end of this lower right toolbar, you can toggle back and forth. Now I'm in paper space. If I click on it, now I'm in model space. I'm in a layout tab, but you can see now I've got this blue border going around my drawing. That opens up the viewport window and puts me into more or less. So this is our paper space. I think my screen recording died, so I'm back now. Here's here is our paper space on this. And again, we can switch back and forth between paper space and model space, and I can check it down here. So here's paper space. If I click it, now I'm in model space. You can see now I've got a blue border. It highlights what viewport is open. And that is like opening, so paper space is like a window, and I'm looking through my window, and I have a border, that's the frame around my window. I'm looking through that window into model space. And anything I write or do in here is kind of written over the top of that window. It's like writing on the glass of the window. But if I open up model space, it's like I opened the window, and now I can reach through the window into model space, and I can do stuff on two elements in model space. Now, things in model space I can highlight, and I could do things to them if I wanted to. This is a really poor way to work. Don't do that. If you want to fix things in model space, go to model space over here on this tab and do it there. Right? I do not recommend messing around through the window from paper space. It's a little weird. But the main thing we do is we can zoom in and out, and now I can rearrange stuff. And you see this red text is actually written in paper space. And there's a good reason for doing that. That's where we put most of our dimensions and our callouts, is that way. Because now they're scaled to the paper and are not scaled to the model space. If I had drawn them in model space and then I zoomed in and out like this, now they're at the wrong scale. Whereas if they're in paper space, and I can pop back into paper space, now you see I've moved my background and I changed my scale of my model space. And now that I'm back in paper space, now it's locked in. When I zoom in and out, the whole paper, the whole sheet will move in and out with me. So the whole layout tab moves in and out with me like that. And we like to put our dimensions, just FYI, in paper space, because then they are always at a set scale, a set size. And I don't have to worry about, because I zoomed in or out and changed my idea about how far out I want to be zoomed, that now I have to redo my dimensions to make them look right, to make them the right size. It could be, sometimes I zoom so far out I can't even read the dimensions, so I put it in model space. So normally we put very few dimensions, if any, in model space itself, and neither do we put many callouts in. I put callouts into myself. I put them on a layer that doesn't print. It's a scratch layer, just as notes to myself, and that's okay, because that never gets, those are automatically turned off when you go to plot. But if it's something you want people to see and they want to be on a sheet, put it in paper space. And that's almost, I would say 97.2% of the time, you will not put any dimensions or callouts that you want on your plans in model space. It would be very rare. And that we would. I can't think of a good place, good example of where I would ever put dimensions or text in model space. That being said, in the last exercise, we did put stuff in model space just to get practice of how to do it. So here we are in paper space. This is key to making real plans, making prints that you're going to give to contractors. You can see this is all set up. We've got our title block. You can make it a standard title block, and then you can drop that into every layout sheet. Ours is already in there for us, right from that. Some of the instructions we're supposed to do today, we're supposed to work with this viewport and change it. I already showed you that if I jump over here to model space, now I'm in model space, I can zoom around in here and move stuff through that. I can also change the scale of it, and I can change it just by rolling my little mouse wheel in and out and change that. I can do zoom extents. I can do any of the zoom commands in there, but I could also set it to a scale based off of what my paper is in. And we do that all the time because we want to print things at scale. So if this is a 24 by 36 inch sheet, quite often I'd be like a 1:20 or 1:30 scale. I can set that there. So right there, automatically now I'm at 1:30 scale. And then quick, before you touch anything, switch back to paper space. Now it's locked in. My scale is locked in, and I can't accidentally mess it up. That's the number one problem with accidentally being in model space in these drawings, is that you'll zoom in or out and not remember that you're in paper space, and then you mess up your layout, and that's not fun. All right, through that. The other way to get into model space in here is just double click inside a viewport, and you can see now I've got the blue border around it. I'm now in model space. Now I can mess it up, and so that's not good. You can always hit U and then the space bar to undo all the changes you've made, and it'll take you back through. There we go. Okay. Some of the stuff we were supposed to do the VPorts command, and if I do VPorts, an S on the end of it, I can make a new viewport. I didn't really want to do that. We do that later. If I come back over here, here's my instructions, right? And I flip down through here. Yep, we're changing that. So we are going to come down here. We're going to do viewport clip. We're going to change how much we see of the viewport through that. And I'm going to drop this back over here. And I'm going to do viewport clip. And I'm not in VP clip. It didn't work. There we are. Now, which viewport do I want to clip? That's what it's asking me for. And I can't see the border. And and why is because we sneakily put the border underneath this sticker line there. And if I hover, I'm zoomed in right. Let's say we zoom in at the corner. All right. Yeah, right underneath this thicker line is the viewport, and that's it right there. And if I zoomed in far enough, I can click it, and now it's asking me select clipping object or polygonal. And I don't have an object to clip to, so I'm going to hit the space bar to accept polygonal. And now I'm going to draw a box in here, polyline, and I'm going to hit C for close, and that clipped my viewport. And now I have a different shape, right, for that. In a fancy drawing, you may have 2 or 3 viewports open in the same drawing, and that's normal through there, because this allows us to have focus areas on the same model space, so in the same model space, but we're looking at different parts of the same model space in this sheet. And so I moved all that over, but now so these callouts, these leaders were not part of, they're in paper space, they weren't in model space, so they didn't move with it. So now I have to move them. I can move them this way. I just select them all, hit move, and now I drag them over here. And you can line those up. I think I asked you to line those up in the drawing. I won't take the time right now to do it. Now I can do a new viewport. So if I do viewports, and what kind of a viewport do I want to do? Well, maybe I want to do a single one, but okay. Here I can make a new viewport, and there's my new viewport. And give it a second, and now it is going to try to redisplay every single thing in that drawing. And it's really confusing because it's trying to show too much. And I can kind of zoom in, and then my favorite command is regen, R-E-G-E-N, and that will redraw it. And the text is annotated, and so it's trying to look really big until you hit regen, and then it rescales it to what's your current zoom level is. And so I can zoom in here, and maybe up here in this viewport, I want to have a zoom in on this house or something like that. That's why viewports is nice. And in paper space, I have multiple viewports. Is now I've got this scale. I can see the intersection. I can zoom in on something different up here, but yet still include it all in this drawing. And so now I'm back in paper space. I can grab this. I can drag this around. I can put it wherever I want in there. All right. The instructions for today are going to tell you exactly what to show in there, and they're going to give you coordinates of how to center it and do all that. You're going to need to add some text, and then you're going to create a new layout tab, and you're going to create a border on it and all that. Oops, went too far. Back from there. And some of the other things that we need to know is how to set it up for printing. And so here's my sheet, and I can come into my sheets. If I come over here to Page Setup Manager, that's how I can control how this is done. This is, I find, the best way to do it. Through there, here's sheet 1. That's the active one. It's got the stars on either side of it. That's the name of that one was. So that's great. So I'm going to modify that sheet. It says it can't find the printer that it was set up for originally, so I can do this. I'm going to ask you to come through here. You're going to change it to drawing to PDF is your printer style. We got that. What size of sheet? Here you can pick what size of sheet you want to do. This one was set up for 24 by 36 inch originally. On that, I think, I'm trying to remember what we asked. I think we're going to leave it as that until you make your own. Yep, looks like that's true. Through here, What are we plotting? We're plotting the layout. Yes, we could do everything you see. We can do a special window, but the layout picks out this layout tab, and that's what it's going to plot. So that's what we want. We like to scale line weights, and so that's things that are scaled to be thicker lines are going to show up as thicker lines, but in proportion. So we're going to scale the line weights. What's my plot style? This is how we plot different lines. I ask you to pick ACAD.CTV. I'm going to display it. And typically we leave this as 1:1. So we're going to scale it as 1 inch paper scale is 1 inch paper scale when it plots. And then I can click OK. Right, from that, and now that's set up. So sheet 1 is set up. And I can close, and yep, there we go. And now that's done. And now when I go to plot, which is up here, right, it remembered all that stuff. Because I set that up in the Page Setup Manager, now it remembered it and it's ready to go. And so that's what we like to do. We don't have to think about it each time. You could change this every time you click plot for that. And now I'm going to go OK. And because I'd selected plotting the drawing to a PDF, it's going to ask me where do I want to save it. Now you're going to want to save it to your S drive. Every time you save one, today you're going to want to save that to your S drive so we can see it later. So then now you're all set to go from there. If you want to make a new layout sheet, you just hit the plus sign. Now you've got a new layout. We pop over here. It's going to be real basic. It may be set up as an 8.5 by 11. We can check by going back to our Page Setup Manager. There's our Page Setup Manager. Now I'm in Layout 1, and I'm going to modify it. Yeah, it's 8.5 by 11 is what's set to. I want to change it also to DWG to PDF. That's good. It's a full bleed 8.5 by 11. Here's how you can change what size the sheet is. I'll leave it alone. That's fine. All right, from there, maybe I want to also make that ACAD Proto. I could also make it a grayscale. I'll print it as a grayscale through there, scale my line weights, and I'm OK. And that's set up now. So layout 1 is set. So there we are. Here's my viewport. And now inside my viewport, right, I can move around in here. I can regen stuff. Takes a little bit. There we go. I can do some more regen every time I zoom in. And finally I can regen again. There we are. And that's it. And now if I go back to model or paper space, sorry. Now this is a window I can move around. And I can change the size of my viewport and what I'm seeing in it through there. And now if I wanted to add in a title block, right, you can use any drafting tools you like. I can make a big box around it. I can change the layers of these, and I normally do. I put them on special layers. Right now this one's on some blue layer that was already set. That was our active layer, and so that's how you do that. And then you can add text in, and that's how you make your new title block for that. That's all in Paperspace. You're actually drawing things in Paperspace from that. And then if I come back here, this is a viewport. I can come back in. I can double click inside of it. I'm in model, and now I can change what scale I'm in. Maybe I want to make that a 1:10 scale and zoom in on something and then pan around and then back out. And then I'm back in Paperspace. I can regen. Everything looks better from that. And so there's my layout on that. I think that's that should be enough intro to get you ready to do today's in-class assignments. From that, I'm looking through the instructions here for today. I don't see anything else that's super important. Viewports, right? I guess one thing is it does have you do a circular layout. If I go back to this sheet, right? And if I do VPort clip, again, which we had before, select the viewport to clip, and you can clip it on an object. And so if I drew in, we're having you draw in a circle first. So just draw any little circle in. There we go. Now if I do V clips, and what viewport am I clipping? I'm clipping that one, and I select it, and messed up here. V clips, V clip, VPort clip. And that's what my problem was. And I'm selecting that one, And now it says select clipping object. If I click on the circle, it uses that as my clipping object. And that's how you can use a special shape, or in a very set dimension one. If you want one that's 2 inches on one side and 3 inches on the other in a rectangle shape, you can define that very exactly and then clip exactly to that shape from that. This is circles, and obviously it's clear that it worked or didn't work. And using the circles, that's a good practice one on that. That should cover everything for today, enough to get you started.